Good morning, everybody. As we go to the chitas of today, we're holding. Today is Friday. We're holding the sixth. Today's Friday. Today's Thursday. We're holding the fifth reading in the book of Koirach. We're holding on chapter 17, verse number 16 in the book of Numbers. We are at the end of the story of Koirach and the Jewish people complaining that Moshe has put the Jews into a dangerous situation. God spoke to Moshe saying, Dabo b'nei Yisrael, speak to the Jewish people. V'kach mi'ita mata leves of, take from each of them a staff to each family. Me'ez kol hanasim, from all their princes. Every tribe had a nasi, every tribe had a prince. Leves aveso to his family. Shneim asam mates would be 12 sticks. Isha shmoi tichta marteo, in each and every staff you should put the name of that tribe. And then Veshem Aaron tichta v'mata Levi, and then take a staff for the tribe of Levi and write Aaron's name on that stick. Kimata echo l'reish beis avesav, for each and every tribe should have this stick. Now she says, even though I have divided them to two families, the tribe of Levi was divided into two families, the family of the priests and the family of the Levites. Nonetheless, one tribe, they're all one tribe, the tribe of Levi. And in the tribe of Levi, you have the Kohanim and the Levim. Verse number 19, you take these sticks and you should put it into the tent of meeting. Lefnei Eidos, before the testimony, Ashivay l'chashama, which I commune with you in that place. Verse number 20, and with the staff of whose man I will choose will blossom. And this, and I will cause thus to calm the Jews of their complaints, who I have chosen, which they are against you. Now she says, though, it's an interesting word, how calm, and therefore Rashi brings down by a Amai in the book of Genesis that he subdued the water. And also you find in the Megillas Esther that the king's anger abated. So shechacha means to abate, to put aside. Verse 21, and Moshe Rabbeinu spoke to the Jewish people, and each and every one of the tribes gave him a staff. Nasi echad, matal nasi echad, each and every one and gave him one stick per tribe. Lebeis avesam, to the families of the father's house. Shnei masa mates, there were 12 sticks, umata arein, and the 13 sticks between their staffs. Now she says he placed his stick in middle, so not to say it blossomed because he placed it close to the divine presence. So you shouldn't complain that, oh, his stick was closer to the Holy of Holies, and therefore his stick blossomed. So therefore he took Aaron's stick, he put it in the middle. Moshe placed the staffs of Hashem before God in the tent of meeting. Verse 23, it came the next day. Moshe Rabbeinu came to the tent of meeting, and behold, the staff of Aaron of the tribe of Levi, Lebeis Levi, it blossomed, vayetze ferach, and it gave blossoms, vayitzu tzitz, and it sprouted buds, vayigmol shkedim, and it produced ripened almonds. Now she says, vayetze ferach, as literally implies stick blossomed. Rashi said, tzitz, this is the budding of fruit when the blossom falls off. Vayigmol shkedim, when the fruits became recognizable, one could tell that they are almonds. It's related to the child grew up by Yigmal, and he was weaned. Term commonly used for fruits of trees. As Rashi brings down, the buds become ripened grapes. Then Rashi asked the question, why did it sprout specifically almonds? Because it's fruits that blossom quickest of all fruits, almonds, signifying the one who challenges the priesthood is likewise punished quickly, as we find regarding Uzziah, that the tzeiras broke out in his forehand. Onkelos also translates it as v'kafish shigidim, meaning it produced a kind of cluster of almonds, bound kefufa one on the other. Verse 24, Vayetze Moshe, and Moshe Rabbeinu took out, as Kol HaMatos, and Moshe Rabbeinu took out all these sticks, B'fnei Hashem, before the tent of meeting, Al Bnei Yisrael, to the entire Jewish people, Vayiru, and they saw it, Vayikach Ishas Mateu, and each person took his stick. And that's the end of the Chumash for today. We now go to the Tanya of the day. So we are holding the 10th chapter of Shar HaYichud Ve'emunah. We are holding the 10th chapter of unity and faith. The Alter Rebbe, who's been trying to explain to us the concept of Tzimtzum, which is a difficult concept in Chassidus and Kabbalah, the aspect of a contraction. How does God contract himself? And that's the deep concept. That means, how does God come from infinity to a finite? You have to learn a lot of Kabbalah. You have to learn a lot of Chassidus to be able to comprehend these aspects of Chassidic terminology and Chassidic teaching. And Alter Rebbe, who wrote this, is trying to express to us and to explain to us and hopefully impress upon us this aspect of a very, as Alter Rebbe said before, last chapter, if you remember, that this is well understood better to those who have the understanding of Kabbalah. But we shall continue the Alter Rebbe. Concluding the previous chapter, the Alter Rebbe explained that since God is infinitely exalted above intellect, intellectual means are inadequate. So you can't even say that God is a wise, God is kind. All these expressions have no identity to God, because God is above and beyond any kind of expression. Are inadequate to grasp his absolute union with Sfiris of the world, Natzilus, the world of emanation, despite them being limited to a particular divine attribute of wisdom, kindness, and so on. The Zohar thus turns these attributes as a secret of faith. Side, it's the side of Emunah. It's the hidden aspect of Jewish faith, that we believe in the concept of the paradox, that God is in the finite as he's in the infinite. And God is in the world as he's above the world, all at the same time, which is one of the secret concepts of Chassidus. It's one of the secret concepts of the Zohar Dosed, the secrets of faith. For the union with the divine is beyond mortal comprehension. So that's why it's faith. So that a Yid believes, that's why Chas v'Shalom, the second commandment in the 10 Commandments, you shall not make any God into an image, or God into a physical, because Chas v'Shalom, which worlds have done that. Nations of the world have done that. They turned God into a physical concept. Chas v'Shalom, a Jew is not allowed to do that. But a Jew has to believe that God is within the world as he's above the world. And God is infinite, he's finite, the same thing. There's no difference to God, infinity and finite. Both of them is a created concept. Infinity is a created aspect, and so is finite a created concept. And God created both, and they're both within him. So the question is, why do we express godliness as wisdom and kindness? We say, just like God is kind, we should be kind. And thus, like God is wisdom, we should be wise, etc. We should follow his Medosav. It says openly, we should follow the characteristics of godliness. Because we talk in the words of the Torah, as the Gemara, the Talmud said. Very famous statement of the Talmud that the Alter Rebbe is going to bring down right now, which is a statement of the sages, that the Torah talks in the language of man. It doesn't talk, so to say, in secret, in tongues. God talks like humans talk, and that's the way the Torah talks. And therefore, we express ourselves in the words of the Torah. Nevertheless, despite the fact that the spheres transcend intellectual comprehension, the Torah speaks in the language of man. Why does the Torah speak in the language of man? Because the Torah wants that everybody should learn Torah. It's not a VIP book. It's a given over to every single person. Every Jew, for sure, was given the Torah from 5 years old to 90 to 120, that they should learn Torah. And why? Lishkas ha'izan, to be, so to say, to that the ear should listen. Mashi yichayil l'shmaya, so to say that we should all Shema Yisrael, hear, O Israel. If God's going to talk if the Torah is going to talk in a language that's above comprehension, you cannot hear it. And therefore was given the permission once the Torah talks in the way of man. So that's why Kabbalah, scholars of truth, the Zohar, the Arizal, and so to all the Kabbalists who spoke from then and on, to speak in our bederech mashal tzikon sfiras, to speak allegorically in the concept of emanations. Note by the Rebbe, the true word mashal to lagari is to stresses that it's only a mashal, and its object are not identical, but merely that they are similar between the relationship that subsists amongst the particular of the analogy to the relationship that subsists amongst the particular of the analogy. There is, however, no connection between the particular aspect and the analogy and the analogous. So therefore, we have to realize that when you say an analogy, you say a story, you say an analogy, you use a word, it doesn't mean that it's exactly like the word or exactly like the analogy. It's actually not like the analogy. Here, for instance, the sun ray and the sun do not compare to any way of the spheres and their source, but even though Kabbalah always gives the analogy of the sun and its ray. For the analogy refers only to a manner in which the sun rays are related with the sun itself. This analogy makes it easier for us to comprehend the unity of the Sfirot of God and their source. But it's only an analogy, and we shouldn't get stuck with the analogy, because there's no comparison between the sun and its ray and God and the light of God that comes to the world. It's just an analogy that we should be able to comprehend something a little bit in our minds. In the Kabbalah, the spheres are called oiros, which is lights. Very important word in Kabbalah, in Kabbalistic terminology, in Chassidus, oir, light, the light of God, the light of Torah, the light of the soul, the light of these emanations of godliness. Using terminology borrowed by the revelation of light. Kineir Hashem nishmasod, and the verse says, for the candle of God is the soul of man. So we compare the soul to a candle of light. It's an analogy, self-understood, and it's not a candle, it's not a burning fire, it is a spiritual concept. But we give that analogy. Why? So that by the means of this metaphor of a candle, she'll be able to understand, just like a light is always connected to its source. That's really the analogy that it wants to give, from the light of the sun to the sun. The sun's ray is always connected to its source. That's why when the sun moves away, it gets dark. Why? Because the ray of the sun is always connected to the sun. That's the analogy. So too, Kabbalah wants to explain that everything is ultimately connected to its source. The light of God is always connected to its source. So we should realize it's one concept, because without the source, it has no identity. It loses its existence. This is illustration, like the unity of the sunlight within the solar globe, with the solar globe itself, which is which is called not the sun, but the luminary, in so much as it emits light. So in Chassidus, we call the sun the Mar, the luminary. So we have the luminary and its light. Or in Chassidus, in Kabbalah, is the Or and Ma'or. Or is light. Ma'or is the source of light, the luminary. As the verse itself says, when it compares the sun, what does it call the sun in the Torah in Genesis? It calls us Hamor HaGodol, the great luminary. It doesn't call the sun Shemesh. It calls it in the book of Genesis, in the beginning, it's Hamor HaGodol, the great luminary. What does it mean? It's the source of light. So we have the source of light, and you have the light. And the ray and the beam of light that spreads from the illuminary, Nikra is called light, Ur. As it's written, the verse says in the book of Genesis, Vayikra Lakim La'ur, the Torah, God called Ur in the first day of creation, Yom, called a day. So there's Ur and there's luminary. The sun never stops. But when the sun moves away, the day changes to Erev, to evening. Why? Because there's no Ur. The Ur has moved with the Mar. So where there's the Mar, where there's the luminary, there's the Ur. That's the analogy. So the Ur, that's why in Chassidus, in Kabbalistic teaching, that there's expression, Ur Davuk Lamar. The light is always connected to the luminary. It's never, ever separated from it. Because it always needs that connection. And when the light is within the source of the orb of the sun in the Ma'or, it's united with they're in the absolute unity of the sun. Because in this sun, in the orb of the sun, there's one entity, namely the body, Shuguf HaMor HaMeir, is only the luminary of the sun, which emits light. It would hardly be reasonable to say that within the orb of the sun there exist two things, the luminary and its light. Within the sun's globe, there's only the Mar, there's only the luminary, there's only the sun. So too within the light of God. Within God, it's only God. That's it, that's the analogy. So Kabbalah, Chassidus, the Torah gives this analogy so that maybe you'll be able to understand what means God and God's light of God. That we cannot separate, ultimately, Chas v'Shalom, God forbid, to separate between the energy of God, the light of God, in the world to God Himself, because that's like the analogy of the sun. You cannot separate the light from its orb. Because the ray of the light of the sun that comes from the sun, when it's in the orb of the sun, over there it's one body, which is illuminated, illuminates the world, illuminates the light, and there it acts as no existence by itself at all. So over there's no concept of light, there's a concept of the sun. So the appearance of the ray of light outside the sun would seem to indicate that all light exists within the sun itself. For because it reaches out and illuminates the whole world, Baruch Hashem. It's surely found within its source. In fact, however, when the sunlight is considered at the stage when it's found within the luminary itself, it's so completely unified it cannot be termed light at all. Within the sun, the light has no existence with an independent identity. It has only the sun. And therefore, it's totally united with the sun. And the Torah gives this analogy for us. This is not the Alter Rebbe's analogy. This is the Torah's analogy, which gives a Jew, a human being, maybe some analogy to what the Eibishter means, the Ur Hashem. When it says God created light, in the beginning of Genesis, God created light. Vayihi Ur. When God said, let there be light, what does that mean? Let there be light. The Eibishter created a concept that comes down to the world. And that's why it says in the beginning of Genesis, Bereishis bara Elokim asher shamayim v'saaretz, that the whole world was created through this light. The heavens and the earth. We're all created through the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but self-understood, the light is totally nullified in God's existence. So precisely in this manner, and self-understood, it's an analogy. V'yaisim is that even more so. The unity, hey midah shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, tzenosa chamasa be'elam atzilas, imahus v'atzosa v'giachol. So too the unity. On one hand, the attributes of the holiness of God's Holy One, blessed be He, and His will and His wisdom in the world of emanation. With the other hand, His essence and being, as it were, it's all one concept. He becomes clothed within them into these lights, and united with them in a perfect unity. Since they derived and emanate from Him, again, just like the analogy of the light that is diffused from the sun. However, God's unity with His attributes is not exactly in this manner, meaning like the fusion of the sun with the light which is still within it. But it's a manner which is remote and concealed from our comprehension. Because His ways are higher than our ways. So it's really hard for us to comprehend this concept of unity of God. It's something far above our comprehension and our understanding in the unity of God. Nevertheless, despite its superior manner of unity, the Torah was written so that we have some comprehension. So the model, the ear, the Eibishter created the ear in a certain way, and God wanted that the ear should listen. Shema Yisrael, the ear should listen. We need to have some comprehension of God. That each person needs to learn Torah and needs to learn godly concepts so that they will be able to understand each person to his capacity. So Nishba v'Nizbeinen, we can all perceive and we can comprehend. Just like the analogy of the light of the sun, which is totally united with, nullified with its source. Over there in its source that has no name. Only the name of its source. Self-understood God and godliness is above the sun. The sun is a creation, a physical creation, while we're talking in spiritual concepts. So the physical cannot per se give us exact analogy to the spiritual. It's only an analogy. So too the attributes of God's holiness. God is wisdom, and God is understanding, God is knowledge, and God is kindness, and God is severity, and God is mercy. All these statements that we say about God, attributes of the Holy, blessed be He, and His will and wisdom are not designated and called by these names at all relative to Him. There's no names of God. You cannot give a name to godliness. But only in relation to the creatures which are noted by the Rebbe below in the world of Atzilus, Bri, Yitzir, and Asiya. These creatures, once you come to the next world, the lower worlds of Bri, Yitzir, and Asiya, the world of creation, the world of formation, the world of action, you have distinguished situations. So in the world of emanation, the world of Atzilus, they're one. They're totally one with their creator. But as they come down lower from level to level, they start becoming more distinct. They start having a more of a physical identity. Like ultimately, when it comes to this world, we have a self-existence, so to say. We feel a self-existence. But really, the truth is, everything comes from God. So that's why a Jew has a emunah that even though he feels self-existence, but the truth is his existence only comes from God's existence. So that's the truth. But as we come from level to level, we become more physical and more physical and more physical. That's why we ultimately feel that we have existence, self-existence. So that's the way that that's the Alter Rebbe is explaining the concept, the Kabbalistic concept, say that the Shtalshus, the way the world ultimately comes into a selfish existence, starts off as a selfless concept, but as it goes down from level to level, it becomes more selfish, and ultimately you have the world of action, and then you have the ultimate creation of something, even a stone, which in the stone you cannot see the godliness at all. It's an inanimate object. But the truth is that this inanimate object has no existence without God's existence. So who through his will and his wisdom and understanding and knowledge would grab himself in the holy and motive attributes of such as chesed, gevurah, and teres, kindness, severity, and beauty. So thus the spheres has turned chachma, bina, das, chesed, and so forth in relationship to beings which are created and reified by God through his will and wisdom and so forth, which clothe themselves into these emotive attributes. As it's brought down in the Medrash, in the Gemara, it says, Basara Devarim Nivra Ilam. By 10 things was this world created. B'chachma, b'sfuna, b'das. By wisdom, by understanding, and by knowledge, etc. And etc., which means by chesed, kindness, gevurah, severity, tiferes, beauty, netzach, by victory, Hoid, glory, Yesod, foundation, Malchus, kingship. So that's the Gemara says openly that it needs that ultimately the Eibishter comes down into midas, into ultimately attributes, which ultimately comes into this world, which the major two attributes, first, the three concepts of intellect, Chachma, Bin, and Das, everything in this world hopefully has a wisdom, understanding, and knowledge, and ultimately you find Chesed and Gevurah, the concept of kindness and severity in this world, both in the extremes. But ultimately you have chesed, unlimited aspect of chesed, kindness in this world, and you have sadness in the world we live in. We live in a world where there's sometimes gevurah, unlimited evil in the world, gevurah, severity in this world. Because ultimately that's the way the world, the Eibishter created the world, and there needs to be the transformation of severity, the sweetness of severity. The Siv, as it says, Hashem b'chachma yasad aretz. God founded the earth with wisdom. Koinen shamayim b'svuna. He established the heavens with understanding. B'daite tehomis nikvu, and with knowledge, the depths of the abyss were burst open. We thus see in the Medrash that the world was created by the means of 10 things, which is the 10 spheres. Ukamayim Eliyah, as Elijah says in Kabbalah, the famous statement of Elijah the prophet. He said, the apik asa tikkun, this is in the Zohar. Pashas opens up Pasach Eliyah, formed part of the deduction of Tikkunei Zohar. It's brought on the Zohar. Elijah, the prophet, said, the apik asa tikkunin, you have brought forth 10 garments, v'karin la esa sifrin, which is called in Kabbalah the 10 sfirot, the 10 lights. Why did God bring about this concept? L'naig bin alman, through which to direct the hidden worlds, the unrevealed worlds, meaning the worlds that transcend moral comprehension. The lo is galman, v'alman is gallion. God, in essence, created through these lights. He created the world of Atzilus, which is called the upper world, the world of that is uncomprehendable, and ultimately comes down into the lower worlds, in the world of comprehension, the world of the revealed, the world that is accessible to mortal comprehension. Uba'oin iskasya, and through them, through these lights of God, he ultimately hides himself, conceals himself. So that's why these worlds have two concepts within it. And that's why you learn in Chassidus, there's no concept of concealment, because everything is revelation. To this world, everything is revelation. Some things are revealed in an open manner. Some things cannot be revealed in an open manner. It needs to be revealed in, so to say, a concealed manner. But ultimately, everything God created in the world. So thank God, in essence, that there should be a physical world. You have concealment, that you don't feel godliness. God wanted that every human being should feel his own identity. If God would reveal your neshama, my neshama, within me, I would lose my identity. It will become a godly identity. The Eibishter hid this neshama, so to say, from me. And now I feel my own identity. And my journey is to reveal the soul within me. The more I reveal godliness within me, I reveal the true identity. That even though I feel my own existence, but the truth is, it's a godly existence. Everything comes from God, even my physical side of me, even my own yesh, my own ego, is also creation by God. There's nothing that God didn't create, whether it's the positive. That's what the difference between chesed and gevura. Kindness is the concept of giving. Gevura is the concept of selfish. So self. And therefore, the Eibishter created, just like he created chesed, the concept of kindness in the world, he also created the concept of severity in the world. And why did he do that for? Because he wanted that I should have my identity. I don't want to lose your identity. Never should you lose your identity. And you should always be able to reveal godliness in the world. So from the created being, so that it would not be able to perceive divine life first, that creates and vivifies them, that was the greatest. So that ultimately, that was the greatest kindness that God did to the world and to each and every one of us, that he did a contraction. And now every one of us has a purpose and has an agenda, has something to accomplish in this world. And it becomes his accomplishment and becomes my accomplishment, because I accomplished it through my service, even though ultimately everything is a godly purpose. And that completes the Tanya of today. Today is Rosh Chodesh. It's a new month, the month of Tammuz. Today is the 30th day of the month, my friends. It's, if you say the Psalms from chapter 145 to the end of the book, chapter 150, those are 6 Psalms of the book of Psalms. If you say those 6 Psalms, you do the chitas of the day. The Rebbe writes today in the Yom Yom, of the 30th day of Sivan, he writes, in reviewing a weekly parsha, twice by text and a Tiger Moonklis, that's on Friday. When you review, you're supposed to say 2 times every pasuk. You're supposed to say on Erev Shabbos on Friday is called to repeat the Chumash, to say the pasuk twice and then say Unklis 1. So we reviewed Haftarah also 2. In case of Shabbos Chodesh, we say it also combine the parsha with the Shabbos Chodesh. The Alter Rebbe responded to a young genius, famed for his intellectual gift. Alter Rebbe, the one who wrote the Tanya, the one who learned us now, at his first Yechidus in 1795 in Lyazna, the city he lived in. Spirituality and physicality are antithetical in their very essence. They're the opposites. A superior quality in the physical is a deficiency in the spiritual. In material matters, the Mishnah says, one who is satisfied with a lot is the individual of high quality. When somebody say Ezu Asher Asameya Pechelkai, who is a wealthy person? The person's happy with his lot. So that's a great quality in the physical world, that we should be happy with what we have. A person possessing this trait will, through Aveda, attains the highest level. In the spiritual matters, however, to be satisfied with one's lot, that to be happy spiritually is the worst deficiency. And it leads, God forbid, to descent and falling. Therefore, the spiritual and the physical are opposites in many ways. The Alter Rebbe just gave us one example. You always have to be happy with what God gives you physically. Never be happy with your spiritual advancement. You should always want to learn more. You should always want to go higher in your spiritual journey in life. And never say, I'm happy with my spiritual existence. That is not a good thing to say. You should always say, I want to become better. There was always a Hasidic expression. If good, is better not better. Good is good. I'm happy. I'm doing the good, but I always can be better. And that's the statement of the Alter Rebbe. God bless you all. I want to wish you a good Chodesh. I invite you all at 10 o'clock to come to Chabad or to on this Zoom or on Dora Direct, and we're going to have a Sikha of the Rebbe. We're going to learn together a Sikha, a beautiful teaching of the Rebbe on the portion of the week. You're welcome to participate. And if tomorrow is still Rosh Chodesh, so in Mir Shem, I'll see you tomorrow again at 8:15. We'll learn Chitas tomorrow at 8:15.
Also, but about Thursday night, halacha you.
Right, tonight at 7:30, come and learn halacha and you. That's not on Zoom. You have to come to Chabad at 7:30. Come and learn very fascinating concept about interest in the Torah. And tonight we're learning Heter Iska, how to make a way to do a business deal in life in Jewish law. Fascinating, very fascinating subject. God bless you all. Have a wonderful Chodesh, and I'll see you within an hour.
Everyone. Thank you, Rabbi.
My pleasure.